Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew, and today we have an incredible guest with us, Hubie Synn, the author of The Tales of a Wandering Prophet. Hubie, it's great to have you with us here today. And I'm telling you, we just had dinner, Sasha and I with you right before this show, and as we listened to your stories, there could not be a better title for your book than The Tales of a Wandering Prophet. The adventures that you've had are absolutely incredible.
They are pretty extraordinary.
They are. And you know, I was saying that you're actually a certified CPA. You're an accountant, and the tales, the life that you've lived, it's like you're a little superhero almost. You're an accountant by day, and you're a prophet by night.
Yeah, Jonathan likes to call me the secret weapon.
The secret weapon.
Because you don't see it coming.
That's great.
And with Jonathan, when he's referring to Jonathan, he is talking about Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, because he is also known, as much as he's known as the Wandering Prophet from his book, he's also known as the man who prophesied the Harbinger, the book The Harbinger, into existence. And so he's the one who actually met Rabbi in an airport, and just God spoke to him and said, speak to that man over there and ask him what the good word is. And from that moment on, it became a conversation that God orchestrated to bring the Harbinger forth. And we're so honored to have you.
It's great to be here.
In the past few months, you've even prophesied to presidential candidate Ted Cruz, and in the past you've prophesied over NFL player David Tyree, who you said would make a play in the Super Bowl that would give him a platform to share the gospel. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. And now, like Sasha said, it's because of you, the man in the airport, that the Harbinger, the book The Harbinger, went forward in America. And the Harbinger's not done yet. And we're going to be talking about that today. Hubie's going to be speaking over something that what he believes is coming to America that he's never shared anywhere before. But it's because of your prophecies and your insight and your ear to the Lord that you've been able to, hear from what the Lord has been saying to you accurately. 3 million copies that went out from the Harbinger. Can you tell us that story of how that all happened, how you met Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, the story that Sasha was alluding to in the airport?
Well, it's actually a pretty amazing story, actually. I was traveling to Dallas, and my flight was on a Friday, and we had this terrible rainstorm. So my flight got bumped from a Friday to a Saturday, so I wasn't happy at all. So I took the first flight out on a Saturday, and my connection was in North Carolina. So I went over there, and then as I stayed up most of the night because I couldn't get any sleep. So I went, got a cup of coffee, and then I'm in the airport, and I went to go find a place to sit down, and there was one seat near the window. So if you want to catch any sleep, that's not the place to kind of sit at. So being that the flight was overbooked, there was kind of like a seat in the middle that was kind of broken, so I went to sat down, and as I sat down, I'm just, I guess, trying to just get my head together. And then all of a sudden, the Lord starts speaking to me about this person. And so at first I ignored it because I didn't really want to do it, and I didn't feel like it. So, and then the more that I kind of had this conversation with the Lord, like, no, I'm not doing anything. Or, I don't feel like it. I'm tired. I keep making all these excuses. Like, I'm trying to convince the Lord I don't want to do this. So he just wouldn't let me go, and he just kept going on and on and on. So then I said, okay, well, let me at least check it out. So I turn to the right, and I look at me, and there is this Orthodox Jewish guy. And I'm just this doesn't make sense, because an Orthodox Jew, as compared to me, what have I got to talk to him about?
Well, that's great.
So then the Lord just kind of kept on me, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm not. This doesn't make sense. Because I'm trying to kind of weed through it, because I don't test it.
Yeah.
So
Lord, I'm a Christian. Surely you can't be telling me that I'm going to speak a word to an Orthodox Jewish man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then I kind of glance over as this continues my conversation with the Lord I don't understand, and he's holding a little book. And as he's holding a book, he's kind of like this. So I kind of nonchalantly just leaned over to see what he's doing. And he's reading a book. He's reading Proverbs. So I was like, Lord, this doesn't make sense. He's reading Old Testament. Yeah. So I don't know what this is really going on. I'm kind of confused. I don't understand. So then the Lord is just getting on me and on me more and more, and I'm like, okay, I'll look again. So I look over, and I see Jonathan. He's leaning down, and he's praying like this. And that's the way the Orthodox pray that I've seen at the
Yeah,
Western
of
Wall.
course.
So I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Something must be wrong. That's my first impression. Something's wrong. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this. This doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm just messing up. I don't know. So then it just gets even more and more intense. And I'm like, okay. I'll check it out. So I take off my iPod and I put my coffee down and I turn to him and I just kind of stare at him. Now, I'm sure in an airport, if somebody's just staring at you, you can kind of feel the eyes on you. So he looks at me and he goes, yes. And I say, so what's a good word? Because I didn't know what else to say. So I said, so what's a good word? And he goes, God loves you. And I went, okay, we can start there. So we just kind of have small talk. And as we're talking...
And at this point, did you kind of feel like the Lord was saying, I've got to tell him something?
No.
No.
It was more like I knew I had to speak to him, and I didn't know where this was going. So we had small
wow.
talk. What do you do? Oh, well, I'm an accountant. What do you do? Oh, I'm a minister. Oh, what do you do? Well, I'm on the radio. What do you do? Well, I kind of minister to people sometimes. We're kind of nonchalant. And then finally, we were having this conversation for a few minutes, and then it was time to get on our flight. They call us for our flight, and I'm like, okay. So as Jonathan starts to get up, nice talking to you, the Lord's like, now. Like the sirens are going off. So as Jonathan gets up, he grabs his bag. I said, you can't get up yet. And he went, no. I go, no, I got something to tell you. So he sits back down. He goes, oh. So then, all of a sudden, this word starts to come out. And it's terrifying. Because as, my gift works, I don't know what I'm saying. So as I'm talking to him, he's kind of looking at me like this.
Trying to figure you out.
Trying to figure me
Yeah.
out. And I'm sitting there thinking, uh-oh, what's going on here? It's not like he's crying or
Yeah,
he's
there's no
smiling.
emotion.
There's no emotion.
Oh, man.
He's analyzing.
He's analyzing it.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like, I don't know, am I getting in trouble here or what? I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
how's he going to react?
right, so we finish, and he goes, you're getting on this flight. I went, yeah. He goes, okay, when we go up in the flight, I'm going to come find you. And I went, oh, no, he's going to come find me. He says, I'm going to come find you. And I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm in trouble now. He's going to come find me. What did I do wrong? So he goes,
man.
it's very important what you said. You got to say it again. And I'm like, I can't do that. He goes, no, you have to. It's for the country. It's for, America. And I'm like, I don't know what I said. So he goes, well, look, let's just get on the flight, and then when we go up, I'll come find you. So I'm like, great, now I can't get any sleep. I did what I needed to do. So I go up, and we get up to the cruising altitude, and all of a sudden this man comes. 'Cause I'm sitting there thinking, maybe he won't come find me. I'm sitting in the aisle seat, and then he comes up. He's got a pad. He's got a piece of pencil.
He's ready.
He's ready.
He's ready.
He's got the biggest smile on his face. And he comes down, and he goes, hey, let's go. Now, we're on a crowded plane. Where are we
Right.
going? So we go all the way to the back, and as we go to the back, there's 2 seats
Of course.
right next to
Yep.
each other.
Yes.
So we get in, he pulls a tray table down, he puts his pad, he goes, okay, tell me again. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. He's like, what do you mean? I said, it doesn't work that way. My gift, it just happens. He goes, let's pray about it. So as we start praying, we're both praying in tongues. People around us are kind of looking at us like that, And then it starts to come out, and as it comes out, he's taking notes like this, sideways, this, and that's how it happened.
That
Wow.
is absolutely incredible. And it's because of that you prophesied to him to write the book.
The book was written already.
The book was written. And so what was it exactly? That you put him in contact with somebody, or?
Well, basically, he was flying down to Texas to see a literary agent. And as he's flying down to see a literary agent, they were going to highlight him as a radio host. And he felt uncomfortable. So he was actually praying that God would get the book out his way. So literally, as he opened up his eyes, he got this word, he stopped. And then because I knew David Tyree, the Giants football player who wrote a book, I knew the publisher because they put me in the book. I was able to connect him to Charisma, and they published his book. And the most amazing thing about it was in the book, when the guy meets the prophet, all the details of that meeting was actually the details of our meeting, and the book was written already.
That is
Isn't that so crazy?
That's incredible.
No, and if you haven't read The Harbinger, make sure you read The Harbinger just for that story in itself, because obviously The Harbinger is such an amazing book. It talks about what is coming to our nation and what has already happened and highlights so many just current events of what's taking place right now. But with this story, this is such an amazing thing because it all happened ahead of time. It was all written down in the book, and then all of a sudden, you guys lived it out.
Yeah, and my flight was on a Friday.
Yeah.
God bumped it to a Saturday. You imagine all the people
Of
that were
course.
upset because their
Yeah.
flights got canceled?
That's
All
awesome.
because of you.
Yes.
You know, and just hearing your stories and reading your book, The Tales of a Wandering Prophet, the Word of God says that a prophet is accurate because his words come true. And, that's why your words have stood the test of time. That's why I'm so excited to have you on the show today, and I'm so excited that you're going to be delivering a word that nobody has heard before. You see, the Harbinger was an ancient mystery. It was an ancient mystery that holds the secret of America's future, the astounding parallels that took place to ancient Israel before they were judged. Those astounding parallels are taking place today in America. And you see, the Harbinger, we need to make this very clear. The Harbinger is not yet done. You see, if the model continues, judgment is still coming to America. It's obviously not going to, you see, there was two different times that this model took place in Israel's history. At one point in time, judgment came 10 years afterwards. Another time in Israel's history, it came almost 20 years. It was 19 years afterwards. You see, right now, you and I are in that window. Don't let anybody, tell you otherwise. The Harbinger is not yet done, and a shaking is coming to America. And we were talking before the show, Hubie, and I want you to tell the audience what the Lord has been speaking to you, that a shaking is coming, and it'll probably come suddenly, and God has been speaking to you through the Old Testament in the book of Genesis, through the story of Joseph. Now, this is going to deal with the market. It's going to deal with many different things. Can you talk about that?
Yes, the Lord has kind of been speaking to me about the story of Joseph and how Joseph was forewarned of a famine that was coming. So I've kind of spent time on that because I believe that, as the Shemitah has happened, as Jonathan has spoken about, which there was a market correction, and now the super Shemitah, which we're in, that markets have kind of gone up and down. And I think it's kind of scary, for lack of a better word, that the markets have not kind of stabilized. They seem to be kind of going up and down, up and down. And as I was kind of reading through what Joseph happened, the Lord was kind of telling me that we need to prepare because there is something coming, a famine's coming. And I was kind of spending time about, really analyzing the details of the story. And the Lord was kind of showing me that, when the famine hit Egypt, before it hit Egypt, it hit other parts of around it first. And when you look at kind of world events now, you can kind of see like in Japan, in China, in Switzerland, in Europe, all their markets are pretty unstable. And they've become so unstable that the central banks that kind of run these economies, they are almost out of any options of what they can do. And even their efforts to stimulate the economy, they haven't really worked. It's more like they're trying to think of some other kind of stimulus to try to get the money flow keep going. So now it's caused a lot of people to go into debt, which is what spurs the economy. But now the debt levels are so high for all these countries, and now even for people. And now, you're looking at the price of oil. So now the price of oil, they have been just releasing all of these. They haven't curbed output because they can't afford to. So we're even now in a place where Saudi Arabia is seeking billions of dollars of loans. And they were the main one that always were liquid. All they had to do was pump oil and collect the cash. Now they're looking for a $6 to $8 billion loan. It's kind of unheard of. Yeah. So you have all of these things around America, and we're in a global economy, that it only takes one little trigger for it to kind of trickle down, like when we had the Greek issue. Yeah. That didn't go away. All we did was refinance their future for like another 30 or 40 years. Yeah. So, and you remember all the rumblings that happened. Well, now you have, you have Europe, you have China who devalued their currency 3 days in a row, which
Yeah.
is unheard of. So you have all of these things that are out of our control, but they're affecting our markets. And I think that now, since we don't have any more cures left, that as it starts to trickle down, it's going to affect our economy in a very negative way.
So you think that there's a parallel. God started speaking to you as you read the story of Joseph, that there was the shaking kind of started in other places in the world, and then it came home, so to speak. And we're seeing that shaking in the financial markets. But you said in the story in Genesis that ultimately a famine came home. And you said that a famine is coming. Do you mean that there's a great shaking of the markets coming, or maybe even a literal famine?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I just know that something's going to happen, and I kind of tried to ask the Lord, what did he mean by famine? Was it financially? Was it, the course of the food? Was it going to be some kind of weather-related, something like that? And I haven't got a clear answer. But he specifically told me to go to that story, and then he kind of, I guess, revealed it to me as I was reading it, which has never really happened before.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you usually get prophetic words about current events?
I usually don't. Most of mine has kind of been one-on-one, that I'm just in a random place at a random time. And this is actually kind of the first time that the Lord has ever taken me somewhere, and he's been kind of, I guess, downloading something to me. And it's kind of new territory for myself because I've never done that. But I noticed as I was kind of reading it and kind of spending time with the Lord going through it, he kind of pointed out certain things, like it kind of it was in bold letters, the fact that it started outside of Egypt before it came. Or Joseph was told before it happened to store up. So, I'm kind of being more conservative with the way that I spend now.
Sure.
Just to make sure that I'm kind of prepared. Like, I'm putting aside more food. I'm buying more food from Pastor Jim. And just to make sure that just in case something's coming, I don't know what it is, but I want to be as prepared as possible because we went through Hurricane Sandy. And when we went through Hurricane Sandy, we saw firsthand what a catastrophe could do. Yeah. And it taught us a lot.
Yeah, and that was one thing I wanted to ask you because I know that you had been through Hurricane Sandy, and really I wanted to see how much did that impact you, because now you are storing food, now you are making sure that you have these necessities in your home, but really, can you explain what that really did to how it opened your eyes to preparing?
Well, my outlook was always kind of the way it's been, is nothing could happen that quickly.
Right.
So I was kind of cynical. I was like, you know what, that could never happen to me. And then when it did, it kind of brought back memories of as a child when I went through, the oil crisis back in the 70s and things like that. And it kind of showed me that, we're not really in control.
Right.
I mean, you couldn't go to the bank because there was no ATMs that had electricity. So unless you had cash, you couldn't buy anything because all the stores were closed. I remember going to the grocery store and there was nothing on the shelves and all you could buy was nuts because that's all there was. Oh. And it was actually a pretty scary thing to think, I got to take care of my family. And even though I had cash, I couldn't spend it.
Yeah.
So I felt in a very vulnerable situation. And as a parent that has children, and even as a husband, I felt like I had totally messed up. And I'm not able to take care of my family. So, I was praying to God to help me kind of through this. But it taught me a lot to say, you know what? I don't know what's around the corner, but if I saw that, anything could really happen at any time, and I need to at least have certain provisions prepared.
These type of prophecies are really foreign to a lot of Christians today, because as soon as you start prophesying these type of things, you're instantly labeled a doom and gloom person.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then you've got to label Noah a doom and gloom person. The Lord told him to prepare. You've got to label Joseph, the whole story that God is speaking to you. And I respect Hubie Synn. His track record is solid. The Lord speaks to him. He prophesies through him. And the things that he prophesies come to pass. And you'd have to call Joseph a doom and gloom pastor. Hubie, have you heard what Heidi Baker has recently said about famine coming to America?
No, I mean, as we were speaking before, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But I was kind of taken back the fact that she doesn't really speak that way either.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think it's interesting the fact that God is kind of bringing this out in me now. as well as her.
And you were talking about the Hurricane Sandy, that what God was speaking to you about. You said the word sudden, or you didn't think it could happen so suddenly. And it instantly struck a chord in me when you said that about the whole Heidi Baker, because she saw famine coming to America, which is really contrary to the things that she usually talks about. In the same way, you don't usually prophesy these type of things. She saw famine coming to America, and it happened very quickly, very suddenly was the word that she used. You haven't seen this video. I want to run this video and have you comment on what you think of what Heidi Baker said. Go ahead and run that clip.
But I saw bread. Remember this? I saw bread lines, soup kitchens, and I saw people wearing beautiful clothing. Their clothing was not worn out. Now, in my nation, when people are hungry, you can tell. I mean, they're in shredded rags. They don't have shoes, or they have flip-flops. Most of them no shoes. They're hungry. They know they're hungry. They come for food not because they're beggars, but because they're hungry. Children, I've held starving children in my arms. I know what starvation is. I know what pain is. I know what suffering is. But in this vision that I had that was in your nation, my nation, which the Lord's helping me to say, I will identify with America as well as Mozambique. And I saw this bread line, long bread lines, and I said, Lord, I don't think that's popular to say in a church, especially one that's all about revival and victory and power. And I didn't want to see what I saw, but I saw what I saw, so I was so undone that I just said what I saw. And I saw all these people. They had fancy cars, beautiful 4x4s and Lexus, Mercedes, BMWs, Toyotas. There they were, fancy, shiny cars, and they're standing in line. And when I said what I said about worrying, the warriors turned into worshiping warriors. The warriors turned into worshiping warriors. I said, why are they so well dressed and standing in this line? He said, because it's a suddenly. They're suddenly in need of food. They're suddenly in need of food. I said, what are we to do? He said, tell them that what you see in Mozambique, they will see in America with the signs and wonders and miracles. That they will see it on their soil. They will see what I do. Now, what is it? What does he do? For one thing, he puts peace in you in the midst of the storm.
What do you think about that?
That's a pretty heavy to listen to, because you wouldn't think anything like that could happen here, which I kind of felt that way. And then my town was, in the town next to it, they were so affected by Hurricane Sandy. So, I mean, it means, I guess, a lot more knowing that she's not the, quote, doom and gloom.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden now she's saying that.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of parallels what the Lord has been telling me. So I think it's...
Hubie, what would you recommend the people do right now? What is the most important thing for Christians to do right now?
I think, number one, we need to pray.
Amen.
Number two is it doesn't hurt to stock up a little extra every time you go to the grocery store, which is what we've done. And I think that as we kind of just commit our way to God, I mean, God doesn't give us fear. And I think that because, you can go through some pretty crazy things like we have, like during Hurricane Sandy, but we had our peace because we knew God would provide. But I think that, the wise thing would be to kind of be conservative now, watch your spending, set aside goods and stuff, and pray, because we don't know what's coming. It could be weather-related, it could be anything. But the fact is, you're kind of prepared, kind of like Joseph started preparing. He would put away 20% as the years went along. He wasn't really so concerned at the beginning, and then he kind of adapted, and God kind of helped him through things when things got a little, I guess, tighter and the situation changed a little. God gave him wisdom on how to handle the situation. But he had a big starting block because he was prepared.
I'm reminded that you were talking about how you experienced Sandy, and it was a revelation to you in the fact that you and your wife and you guys are more prepared for the next storm. So there's a window in between there. There's always that seems to be that window that because God is such a good God. God is such a loving God. God is such a merciful, gracious God that he provides windows. In the same way that there was the Harbinger, the initial storm took place, and now we are in that window before judgment comes. In the same way in Genesis, when God gave this dream and Joseph interpreted it, that there was 7 good years. There was a window of time. And it was actually, I can't even imagine how much people made fun of Joseph in that time period because it was a time of abundance. It was a time of blessing. And yet he's preparing for something to come. I mean, they had to have laughed at him and said, look around you, Joseph, life is good. Why are you storing up? And it was because the Lord had spoken to him. You see, the Lord, in his graciousness, he offers that window of opportunity. But you see, I've always tell people, do what you can, and God will take it from there. That's all we do. You see, in the book of James, it talks about there's a type of faith that's absolutely dead. It serves no purpose. It's pointless. It's pitiful. There's nothing behind it. It's a completely worthless faith. And he talks about it. He goes, that's a faith without works is dead. Your translation might say faith without action is dead. You might have all the faith in the world that you're going to do something fantastic for the Lord in your life. But if you don't have action with it, your faith's dead. This analogy works perfectly with this situation as well. You might have all the faith in the world that the Lord is going to just supernaturally provide for you during this situation. But if you don't provide some action with it, that faith is dead. It's worthless, and it serves no purpose. You see, we serve a supernatural God. Reading your book, The Tales of a Wandering Prophet, we serve a supernatural God whenever you get these incredible words for people, famous people, celebrities. And you don't initially want to do it, but you provide that action. You provide the natural so that the Lord can provide the super. We serve a supernatural God, people. And if we provide that natural, he will provide the super. Hubie, I want to thank you today for sharing this word that a shaking is coming to America. A type of famine is coming to America, and we are in that window. That the most important thing you said, you looked at our audience, you said, pray. Just pray and store a little bit. Joseph had time. You said 20% each year, a little by little by little, and the Lord will take care of you. Absolutely. The Lord loves you. He's not some angry God trying to, make sure, oh, you're not prepared, now I'm going to come and get you. He loves you. He's a gracious, good God. And he wants to take care of us. And he wants to send warnings. And he is. And it's up to us to pay attention.
Yes.
Just thank you so much for being here today. And I hope that you come back to some other time on our show, Revelation in the News.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew, and we'll see you next time.